don't get your head chopped off. We're talking Guillotine Leagues today, and if you don't know what a Guillotine League is, these are very fun. Probably my favorite league format, actually. So you have traditionally as many players as there are games in the NFL, right? So 18 weeks, 18 players. And each week, all you want to do is not be the lowest scoring team in the league. Your head-to-head matchup does not matter one bit. All you want to do is not have the lowest score. Because each week, the lowest person, they die. They get kicked out of the league. All their players get dropped and become free agents. Everyone else has a fab budget. Usually we start at $1,000. You kind of go from there. These leagues are a blast. And I got a chance to be in one with the FFU the other day. We did our draft, and so we're going to take a look at that. And kind of go through the strategy a little bit of how I approach a Guillotine League. So I think one of the big focuses for me in the Guillotine League, because it's an 18-team league when you're first drafting these players, you want safety early. You don't want to take those high-risk players early on in this draft because all you're drafting for is floor, early on especially. All you need to do is beat somebody early on. So if you take some risks and all those risks line up and don't pan out for a week, then you're out, you're done, you're dead. And if they all do hit and you scored 200 points in a week, congratulations, you just survived like everybody else did, right? Like, the difference between scoring 200 points and scoring 80 points early on in the season isn't really that different, as long as those 80 points beat somebody. So early on in the draft, you want to kind of go safer players, which that's going to mean targeting some of the elite players at single positions because you don't want to take super low scores anywhere. So just kind of looking over here at the draft that we just did, you can see my team there. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is a perfect first-round pick for this kind of league, where he is a guy who, yeah, maybe he doesn't have the same heights as a Jamar Chase or AJ Brown, but he's giving you that weekly floor that those guys don't give you. And so I think that he's a guy who really can help solidify your team at the very start. And then round 2, I went Patrick Mahomes. Again, I think you want to target single positions. Basically for 2 reasons. Number 1, early on in the season, you don't want to be taking zeros or super low scores at any position because that's an easy way to get eliminated. Also, late in the season, after a whole bunch of people are eliminated, it's going to come down to like 4 teams, that's going to be your team. You want to bank mega elite players at these single player positions. So Patrick Mahomes, right now, yeah, I can use Patrick Mahomes to be super happy about it. But at the very end of the season, Patrick Mahomes is the kind of quarterback I still will want on my team. That's going to save me some bucks later on because I'm not going to be adding quarterbacks throughout the season. I just need to get one for his bye week. I don't want to have to spend money on quarterback or tight end unless I'm paying up for the mega elites. I do not want to be paying money for a Pat Freiermuth or a George Kittle even. When I buy a tight end, I want it to be Laporta, Kelsey, Andrews, McBride. That's it. That's all. If Kincaid's working out the midseason, I pick him up. But those are the kinds of guys I want to be hitting on at tight end and quarterback. I do not want to be spending my precious dollars on that mid-range of guys who I'm going to want to drop later on in the year. So focusing on quarterback one more time here real quick. Quarterbacks also give you a higher weekly baseline of scoring, right? So there are going to be times in the first probably 5 weeks where the eliminated team is going to score like 50 points. Well, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, those guys average about 28 points per game. So those guys get you about over halfway, sometimes 2/3 of the way of where you need to be getting to on a weekly basis. So by having Patrick Mahomes, I've got a head start, right? And then I just need Christian Kirk, Jalen Waddle, Zamir White just to figure it out and get me across that finish line to like 70 points. So that high-end quarterback early on is so valuable. I cannot stress that enough. So bye weeks are definitely an important factor to keep an eye out here. You do not want too many players banked on the same bye week, especially early on in the season, because you just don't have a whole lot of options to go to. And again, you're just playing for floor. You just want to not be the lowest scoring team each week. I do think early buys are kind of a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, yes, you are missing out a player early on, and that could mean that you're eliminated a little bit early on, right? Patrick Mahomes this season, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown is a week 5 bye. Patrick Mahomes is a week 6 bye. That's danger for me because I'm more likely to not score well those weeks because I don't have my really good players. However, as the old saying goes, I don't have to be faster than the bear I just have to be faster than you. Well, early on in the season, there are more people for that bear to eat. In week 5, there are 11 teams still out there. All you do is beat somebody. Compare that to, say, if all my really good players have week 12 buys, there are less players around. So if I drafted players with week 12 buys, then I'm missing out on really good players when everyone else has a really good team. And so the replacement level of these players gets higher and higher as you go. Versus early on, yeah, if I lose out on Patrick Mahomes for week 6, well, I can pick up a quarterback who's probably going to be on the same stature as a lot of quarterbacks still being used in this league. In this particular league also, we only had 3 bench spots. So I really wanted Mahomes to get that bye week out of the way early on. So that way my 3 bench spots never have to be used for a quarterback ever again once really high-end players I want start going out on free agency. The guys at the Fantasy Football Universe talked quite a bit about this. I'm going to put a link in the description down below to the live stream they did during this very draft. You can kind of see their thoughts on that strategy. My next 2 points for Guillotine leagues kind of do go hand in hand a little bit. So let's talk about this one first here. Understand the shelf life of these players. There are going to be players who are vital in the middle portion of the season, and then the league will simply outgrow them. 2 years ago for me, one of those players was Chris Olave, I remember. In the Guillotine league I was in, Olave was one of the first players eliminated, and I scooped him up, and he was really, really good that year, right? And he was kind of a wide receiver 2, and he was pretty consistent each week for me. He was a vital part of that team through like week 12. But then once you get deeper and deeper and deeper, the player pool becomes just the really great players, right? So at some point, you're gonna have to cut those guys, even though they've been really, really good for you. At some point, probably about 8-9 weeks in, those guys are gonna become less and less important because they're just good wide receiver 2s. You're gonna want those mega elite players. You're gonna want a lot of them. So those players all have a shelf life. I look at my team right now. Christian Kirk is kind of the poster child for that. Tony Pollard, Zamir White. Like, I don't have a late season running back on this roster right now, and I'm okay with that. I don't need to. I just need these running backs to get me to the point where I can buy some other running back. You know, that's probably the position I'm really gonna be targeting. Like, so when Tony Pollard has to buy week 5, I think in week 5 is when I'm really gonna be targeting a running back. And to go with that, yeah, in week 5 I'm gonna be targeting a running back because I need to, and that's one of my things. Do not spend too much money unless you absolutely have to. You are going to want to hoard that money a little bit until later on in the season. Some people like to bid early on those players. Here's the problem though. I think if you spend a lot of that money early on, that's a longer runway for things to go wrong with those players. Think about if last season Austin Eckler became available after week 1. You would have wanted to spend so much money on Austin Eckler just from the sprain his ankle. Kind of make your way through that early portion of the season. It's going to be a little risky. You're going to have some tight butt cheeks there early on. You're going to be scared. But if you can survive the first like 8 weeks and still be among the leaders with that money, you're going to really reap that reward later on. And look, we're not playing to just get eliminated in week 14. No, you want to be eliminated at the very end. You want to be the winner. You don't want to be eliminated at all. And so hold on to that money a little bit, increase your upside, be able to buy and bully teams around a little bit in the second half of the season. Now, even though I'm telling you not to spend your money, do place bids on everyone. Everyone who is a possible upgrade on your roster. Place a bid on everyone, even if it's a bid you do not expect to win, even if it's just a $1 bid, because you never know. There could be a situation where, hey, this team gets eliminated and they had CeeDee Lamb and they had Tyreek Hill and they had Michael Pittman, and a whole bunch of people are going to bid on Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb, and all of a sudden Michael Pittman just gets forgotten about. And you get Michael Pittman for like $5. That does happen in these leagues, where these teams, especially kind of that middle portion of the season, these teams can get really loaded. And those depth guys who could be additions for you on the back end of your roster or even the middle part of your roster, those guys sometimes get forgotten about. A lot of times what we see are the highest players on these rosters that get eliminated. Those guys go for a whole lot of money. And then that next tier where there's some value still to be had, those guys kind of get forgotten about. So just place safety bids. Place very cheap bids that you almost don't even expect to hit, but sometimes they do, and they can come out gangbusters for you. And this final point is pretty straightforward. Just keep an eye on what everybody else's budget is and how much everybody else is spending. Kind of use that as a bit of a guideline, a bit of a helper here, because each league is going to be different. Each economy is going to be different. How teams are spending their money. If a bunch of teams spend a bunch of their money early on, then maybe, hey, you can spend a little bit more because the baseline of having the most money is still going to be pretty high. If everyone's hoarding their money, then maybe throw a couple extra bucks and see if you can snag an elite player early on. Play that game a little bit with those dollars and with the kind of the budgets that are being spent, and kind of use your gut a little bit on this one. It's going to take a little bit of a feel game here, but keep an eye on those budgets, especially as we get further into the season, and keep an eye on who needs what, right? If I have Patrick Mahomes, his bye week is passed, I don't need quarterback, but I have a ton of money. Well, you can look at it and say, well, Matt's not going to spend money on a quarterback. He has Mahomes. So those kinds of things, just be mindful of and keep an eye on. So those are my advice for a Guillotine league. Guys, again, check out the description down below for that video of the FFU. Check out the live stream they did for this Guillotine league. And come on back to the channel. Come check out, I got some sleepers and busts coming up here for quarterbacks and running backs. Check those out right here on the ADP.